My wife and I fall asleep to The Office every single night. We have for now years.
It's a good choice.
And it's coming off of Netflix, and we don't want to subscribe to Hulu, so...
The Office has the best cold open that's ever been on television, and it's where Jim walks in as Dwight.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
Yep. Wait,
Michael?
Wait, Michael, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing right now?
Identity theft is a crime.
Yeah. Jim.
Michael? And we both stand up and walk away.
One of my favorite lines ever came from The Office, and when Michael goes, "Would I rather be feared or loved?" Both. I want people to fear how much they love me.
That's great.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Edwards, and with me is Jared Thatcher, and together we make the Dad's Drinking Bourbon. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, thank you for making us a part of your day. Say hello to the folks, Jared. You're kind of sitting in Zeke's chair today.
I'm so nervous, I don't know what to do with my hands.
Well, thankfully, the microphone, you don't have to hold it. It's on a stand
Now
on the
I'm worried
table.
about moving the microphone. It's going to make a terrible noise, like you already warned me.
When you move the microphone, it does sound like you're farting. Like that's the thing, is if you move that, it's not going to sound good for everyone. They're going to think that a smell accompanied that. I can't even say that word, accompanied. Well, it is a great day. You actually got in the car with me at 6 o'clock this morning, Central Time.
Yeah, what time did I get in the truck, though?
Which was really 7 o'clock Eastern Time.
But I had to leave my damn house at 4:30 this morning to get to you because you
Eastern
live an hour.
Time. So you left at 3:30 Central.
No, I left at 4:30 Central.
Oh, 4:30 Central?
Yeah.
Oh,
You're
man.
an hour and a half away from me.
I know. I used to be a half an hour closer to you.
I know.
But we got in the car. We drove 2 hours away down to the great city of Chattanooga, Tennessee, for something that I must say, admittedly, has been about 3 years in the making, I think, since we've all been talking to each other. And apologies for the long delay. But we are sitting with Tim Piersant and John Lawrence, who are two of the head honchos here at Chattanooga Whiskey. Tim, you are the owner. John, you handle all of the sales and basically sling whiskey for a living. But it is great to have both of you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming down.
As you can see already, sorry, we don't take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah, neither do we.
At all.
As you already know, so...
I have to say, just right off the bat, and I don't want people thinking I'm biased or anything, but the vibe at Chattanooga Whiskey that you guys have, like the videos that you guys put on Instagram, and just the general branding, I don't know how much of that was put on before I came here today. And then after I came here today, I was like, because I was like, man, they post cool videos. They seem like cool guys. And, you know, Tim will be posting a video playing the guitar while he's on his skateboard.
Are you about to say that we're not as cool as we look online?
No.
Is that where you're going with this?
No, I'm about to say that you are as cool as you look online.
We did.
It's
This
one of
place
those.
is so cool, they thought you were a Subaru dealership. This morning, a woman walked up to the door, and she thought this place was a Subaru dealership. That's how freaking cool
Nothing
it looks.
says progressive like a bunch of Subarus in our parking lot.
Correct.
So.
It's like business in the front, party in the back.
Always.
Subaru's like one of those things where it's like,
Well, what's our mandatory at Chattanooga Whiskey?
well, no, but a Subaru says something like, hey, I can go off-road, but I'm also sensible. You know, like I like to go up in the mountains, but I'm safe.
I've been trying to be a positive influence on John here, driving a Subaru for a long time, but he hasn't come around yet.
Well, my last one got stolen, so
That's true.
Wait, you had a stolen Subaru?
I think I'm the only person that's ever had a Subaru stolen. Yeah. It wasn't fun because it was a paid off car that I used to sell whiskey in, and then next thing you know, I wake up to go to work and my Subaru's gone.
Did you leave whiskey in it?
I left a lot of stuff in that.
He hasn't admitted it, but he left his keys in there. I know he did.
I had a spare in there because I travel a lot, and I went to Charleston one time and I lost my keys and I was keyless.
Hashtag sales guy.
Yeah, so I just hide the spare, and it was the first thing they found.
He hid the spare at his ignition.
My dad used to have a Toyota Tercel, like a piece of shit, 1980 something Toyota Tercel, and by the time he sold that thing, the key looked like a toothpick, and you could take it out while driving and like hand it back, and we'd be in the back seat like, Dad, take the keys out, take the keys out. This is the coolest thing ever.
You've now moved up to a Volkswagen, though.
That's actually my wife's car.
Good for her.
Yeah, I drive.
We don't want to get into the saga of John's BMW.
Yeah, I decided it'd be a smart idea to buy a BMW SUV to sell whiskey in, and little did I know that BMWs can suck to be a traveling car. So I drove my wife's car today because she had a flat tire and I had to go patch it. So,
but you know what? You need a car that says, you need like a Ford Escape. You need something that's like...
I feel like Brent should be sitting here right now. Yeah.
You need something that's reliable, that fits a lot of whiskey in it.
Our COO just gave John a 10-minute speech on this yesterday. So
what about how like...
being practical.
I like to ride in style.
No, but it's not even being practical. Like, you don't want to piss the people off that you're selling the whiskey to. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to show up at a BMW like, I don't need to buy his whiskey.
Yeah.
He's rolling it. You know,
you're not selling financial services like, man, he must do really well. I want him managing my money. No, they roll up and they're like, oh, he's already successful. I don't need to buy his whiskey.
That's why when I go see accounts, I park behind the building and just walk around with a limp, and I just walk into the store.
They're like, oh, we're just feeding the man.
Yeah, no.
We don't need to give him any more money.
No, the BMW limps into the parking lot. And they're like, oh, poor guy.
Man, I'd put that thing through hell and back.
The pity money is still green, so if that's the way it's going to be sold,
I drive
golden.
close to 40,000 miles a year.
That number goes up every time you say that.
That's true.
What about
it was 35?
What about if you got a pickup truck for the hauling the whiskey? You could lease another Volkswagen for about $200 a month. And you could get an old pickup truck that maybe has some more miles on it that you're going to put all highway miles.
What are we doing here?
I don't know.
John is talking him into a lease.
Actually,
literally, John is talking John into a lease.
Our other sales manager just got a pickup truck, and I told John we do not allow two sales guys driving.
Do you need a new sales manager? Because this John to my left is a pretty good sales manager over here. Yeah.
I'm not trying to get John Lawrence out of a job.
This John has become our sales vehicle consultant.
That's right.
I mean, if I want to get
SVC.
consultant money from them, that's one thing, but I'm not trying to take anyone's job. John's got a leg up on me. But let's talk about, you guys have been around for a long time. It's almost one of those things where we were talking, and Tim, I didn't expect you to remember me because at that point I did not have a crappy podcast, and I was just a fan of whiskey, but I got to meet you up in Nashville, and at the time you guys had just changed the law in Hamilton County to be able to distill here. For our listeners that know anything about Tennessee whiskey, they know it's been a county by county basis, that even though you could distill Jack Daniels and you could distill George Dickel, that the other counties, it was prohibition by county. A lot has been done to change that. Keith Clark was pretty integral in that. The guys at Corsair were pretty integral in that, as well as you guys were pretty integral in that in Chattanooga and Hamilton County. So I got to meet you then. You guys had been doing 1816, which was your MGP or LDI release. We've gone through that. You guys have some pretty big news today that we are going to get to. But what I want to know a little bit first is, what the hell made you decide to open a distillery in the first place? Especially in Tennessee, where the odds were stacked against you without being able to distill.
Yeah, well, I'm going to let you know a secret. I did not know that much. I've never really known that much. I've just kind of started walking and haven't stopped walking forward, right? And that's kind of how this thing came about. It was discovering the history of whiskey in Chattanooga was the main point of inspiration, but it was a lot more than that. It was exciting to start a company with a buddy. I was born and raised in Chattanooga. I graduated Auburn in 2004 and moved back to Chattanooga pretty much immediately. Met my wife down there, and we moved downtown. I was downtown. I was commuting to Dalton, Georgia every day for nearly 8 years. I mean, it's a 45, 50-minute one-way commute. But yet my wife and I were investing our lives in downtown Chattanooga. So my dad's an entrepreneur. I think I have it in my veins. And when discovering that history of whiskey in Chattanooga, it was kind of the first time I had this feeling like this could actually be it to go after. And at the time, Facebook was hot. And it's not hot anymore, but it was hot enough to where they didn't have all these algorithms, at least that we knew of, right? Like you may remember this, but in 2011, if you posted something on Facebook, everybody saw it. Your friends saw it. It wasn't filtered. It was unfiltered, and so it was the timing was kind of epic in that regard. That we were like, we had this idea. We were like, man, let's start a whiskey company. We'll be the first whiskey company back in Chattanooga in 100 years. When I say I didn't know what I was doing, I had no idea it was illegal. So it was like, well, we both were instantly like, well, we'll just start Chattanooga Whiskey on Facebook. We'll start a Facebook page, and then boom, like we started a company. That's literally what happened. Like we put it on Facebook. We woke up the next morning and we had 100 and something people following us. The next 2 days after that, 500. 3 days after that, 5,000. Like, and it was the locals going like, what is
And it's when's your whiskey coming out?
Yeah, it was literally like, what is Chattanooga whiskey? This is really exciting. We want to try some. We were like, we don't have a product. Then the media called and it just kind of steamrolled from there. We're like, we got to figure out how to put a product together.
So you kind of started like Prestige Worldwide.
Dude, if there was one thing I could model myself after, it would be Step Brothers.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
Yeah, 100%.
This distillery has so much room for activity.
Yeah,
So true.
If we move this over here, Mom, can we put the beds on top of each other?
No, we'll using power tools.
We'll have room for a still right there.
Very, very similar. And it just kind of was like, we did an interview for the Times Free Press and we were on the front page of the business section. I remember like it was yesterday walking into my dad's office. I worked for my dad. I remember walking into his office and going, Dad, tomorrow you're going to see an article in the newspaper about me and Joe starting a whiskey company. I just wanted to let you know because I didn't want you to be surprised by it.
Did you have like a business license right now or like an LLC created or anything?
I think like right before the article came out, there was a local attorney that reached out to us. It was like, you guys need to start an LLC.
Right.
And maybe a trademark or something like that.
Yeah. So we were in the process of all that stuff.
Right.
I can't remember if we actually had it, but it was, when I say I was just trying to walk forward. At this point, I was just trying to walk forward. I didn't know where I was going. And so he kind of sat down. He's like, okay, all right. And I was like, you probably know I'm not going to take over the family business. I'm not going to be here for forever. And he's like, yeah, well, my dad was in ministry for 16 years in Chattanooga. So, there was some local politics there that we had to work through. But anyways.
So that was the family business, was ministry.
It wasn't actually, it was manufacturing in Dalton, Georgia, but I was raised in a family where my dad was in ministry. He started several local Christian nonprofits throughout my lifetime.
Mine too. My dad was a pastor for years and now he owns a CPA firm. And I did the same exact thing as you. Like I walked in one day and was like, Dad, by the way, and I used to work for him. Yeah. I worked for him. It's the same thing, man.
Wow, that's cool.
Like Dad. And my dad said to me, he said, this is so fitting because it's the dad's drinking,
You said, Dad, I'm going to go make
this is so
knives.
Fitting. My dad said to me,
no, that's
son,
what he does.
That's awesome.
My dad said to me, son, sometimes you got to step off the ledge. And he's like, because you're not going to know. You're just going to stand there forever. And you don't want to go through life having not stepped off that ledge to see what happens. And he said, you come from a family of entrepreneurs. You're bright and smart enough that if this goes badly, you can reinvent yourself. And so he instilled that confidence in me.
He was supportive from the beginning. And so was my dad. My dad's been my number one supporter.
And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon. Little boy blue, the man in the moon.
Did we just become best friends?
Yep.
Did you just touch my drums?
I'm a drummer, so don't touch
Tim,
my
we're
drums.
in love.
Don't touch my drums.
We're in love.
John, I think the Johns need to leave.
Yeah, I think we should get out of here.
Let's
go
go.
Drink whiskey in my Subaru. That was stolen.
So
Can't let the Italians walk out of the room. It's not interesting anymore.
no, but this is a great story. So you go to your dad. You say there's about to be an article.
Yep.
We're going to take you to dinner. We're going to give you a presentation at our music video of what it is.
I'm going to be on your
doing.
sailboat.
Yeah.
I did wreck it. I'm sorry.
What did he say then, because we know what Jared said,
Yep.
What'd your dad say?
He kind of sat down in his chair and he was like, okay. He's like, yeah, all right. Yeah. Well, okay. This is interesting. I'm happy for you. And it was just kind of a one day at a time thing. And I said, look, I'm not going anywhere. Because I don't know what this is going to turn into, but this could be a slow transition, a fast transition. I'm not really sure. And he probably wanted me off of his payroll, to be honest with you. So
I never thought about that. That's a great point.
It ended up working out great. And it was about, I'd say, a 6-month transition. So the article comes out, and that was in November of 2011, because I remember it being 11/11. And then, we were full-time that next year. So the financing and how we put it together was truly one foot in front of the other. We went to a family friend. We borrowed mezz debt. It was like $50,000 to buy MGP. And at the time, it was LDI, and there weren't many distilleries that were sourced, that were doing third-party manufacturing. So I think we found like 3 or 4 that were doing third-party manufacturing, and we had them all send us samples. And I remember getting the samples. It was a cold winter night. I think Joe was he had just moved up to DC for a little bit. So he was in DC and I was in Chattanooga, and we both got the samples, and we tried them on the phone together, and we were like, this is the whiskey we want to start Chattanooga Whiskey on. Like, it's really good. And I think it was 3 years old at the time, like early 3s.
How many 3-year barrels does $50,000 buy you at the time of MGP?
So this is kind of crazy. If you know what the cost is of the raw goods of whiskey aging in a barrel right now, this would blow your mind. But at the time, they were $500 a barrel.
I just saw a list last week where 2 and 3 year rye and bourbon from MGP through a third-party source was $1,200 to $1,500. So it's gone up almost 3 times since.
And it actually has normalized a little bit in the last year. When I say normalized, maybe come back a little bit, not much. But yeah, like a 3-year rye is going to go for like probably $1,800 a barrel right now.
Right.
Which is funny because it was even cheaper for some of the other folks that got in the game a little bit earlier. They were getting them for $300, $350 a barrel back then. And then, they had gone up. Oh my God, it went from $300 to $500, but now it's like jumped up even $1,000 more. I know when Pinhook got theirs, it was $350 a barrel.
That's insane. Yeah. It is increased by, 3-4 times minimum. And so, LDI was being bought out by MGP at this time, and they had, they had like 10,000 barrels of this recipe. So 75% corn, 21% rye, 4% malted barley was the recipe. The $50,000 there was some, operating capital in that as well, right? It wasn't just the whiskey, but we had to launch it. So this is kind of funny too. LDI, now becoming MGP, they were requiring a minimum purchase of 20 barrels at a time. Seems reasonable. So we launched Chattanooga, Nashville, and Knoxville, and then shortly thereafter, Memphis, and then Georgia and South Carolina. So we operated in those 3 states only for a long time, and we launched those markets. I think it was we got our first purchase orders for like 900 cases, which primarily went to Chattanooga, and we sold out instantly. We had a big launch party. We had like 1,500 people show up to the launch party. It was awesome.
Oh, that's the locals coming to bat right there.
Yeah, man.
Dang.
It was cool, and we were trying really hard to be transparent and tell people that, hey, just FYI, this isn't made here, because it would have taken a lot longer than this, and that was a process in and of itself. From day one, we were transparent, but every day that we said, hey, just by the way, it's not made here, and so, and we were finding out about the laws, and so we were trying to educate our fans, the local community on it, and start learning about the laws at the same time. But every time we were like, hey, we got to change laws because it's not made here, we'd have like one more local be like, what? It's not made here? I'm not drinking this anymore. Literally, we put ourselves out there, and
super transparent.
Yeah, and sometimes we get punished for it, but I don't regret any of that, because I think ultimately when we started the Vote Whiskey campaign, It led to a lot larger community support, and we would not have changed the laws without the community support.
Where'd you store all those barrels?
They stayed in Indiana. And let me tell you something. This is what's crazy. So, the 20 barrels at a time, we get a phone call from our guy, Perry Ford. He's been up there for forever. He's awesome. Perry, he's like, listen, Tim, there's a big buyer that is coming in, and MGP is motivated, to sell inventory. And so it includes your inventory, and it's thousands of barrels, and it's all going to go like tomorrow. And I'm like, wait a minute. So then we lose our inventory, and we don't have Chattanooga Whiskey anymore, 1816, like the day that starts, it's done.
But if you bought it from them, how could they sell it?
It's just a contract. You didn't pay them yet.
We did pay for the 20 barrels, but we were buying 20 barrels at a time, so it was only getting us a few hundred cases at a time, right? So it sold out. So we went back and bought 20 more barrels. Sold out. We went back and bought 20 more barrels. So on like the third time around, Perry calls me up and he's like, hey, we got a big buyer. The inventory's going to be gone. I'm sorry to give you this news. You're going to end up having to probably source from somewhere else, or we can put new distillate away from you. And I'm like, well, that will put us out of business. Perry, I said, will you give me 2 weeks to come up with the financing to source as many barrels as we possibly can to give us a runway? And he said, well, let me talk to the powers and we'll come back to you. And they did. They gave us 2 weeks. And so we basically scrounged up from family friends $750,000.
You got some good ass family friends.
We do.
Yeah, you do.
Holy crap.
But dude, it was mez debt.
That's a lot of pastors. That's a lot of pastors donating some money. They're taking collection
Just
here in Chattanooga.
Record, no pastors here.
We're
all
the second collection today is going to go to the good folks at Chattanooga Whiskey.
So we're going to pass the plate around again, everyone.
That did not happen. There wasn't a lot of operating capital in that because we bought over 1,200 barrels of MGP. Of that recipe specifically at 3 years old. So now it's like, all right, we wrote our pro forma, we wrote our future. We have 4 years of inventory to grow the brand to X so that we can have enough cash flow to give us time to change the laws, build a distillery, age our product, and then come out with 100% Chattanooga made. And let me tell you, that did not happen. That was the plan. The plan was not executed.
Well, what I was going to ask before, and I like where we've gone here, but you're like, well, shit, we're going to start a distillery. I don't know anything about starting a distillery. We're going to start a distillery. You get MGP. At what part did you have the parallel path? You knew you needed to change the law. You knew you needed to actually learn how to distill or get a distiller on staff. And that's going to take capital. That's going to take space. There's going to take... I mean, it sounds like it was a whirlwind. But where in that time did you start to think like, oh, we actually have to have a 5-year plan and build out and say... Because this place... I know I'm rambling, but this distillery, we are at the Riverside Distillery. Yeah. Not that many people get to come down here. Right. A lot of people go to the experimental distillery. Yeah. The facility here is amazing. I'm going to make sure I post pictures, but you guys have a column still. You have a pot still. You have...
It's the nicest car dealership I've ever been to. And they give you more than water.
Fair. But it's one of the nicer craft distilleries in the state. If you think about it, Belmead is a very nice distillery. You guys are a nice distillery. Leaper's Fork is a gorgeous distillery. Yeah. But this is set up the way that you guys have your sales area and your office area. It's almost like tech company mixed with bourbon distillery in the way that you guys have your office space. It's an open office space. There's collaboration, whiteboards everywhere. You can tell that there's all sorts of good things going on and people are constantly working and you're thinking about your brand and you're thinking about how you can, what are you actually going to do to get out there? That's one of the things I've loved about coming in here is seeing you guys work and seeing what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah. When did you start thinking about that parallel path besides just, oh shit, we got whiskey? I didn't think we'd even get this far.
Well, we got so deep into changing the laws that like it became our everything. The Vote Whiskey campaign, I didn't think about this, the development of a distillery and what that would require for a long time. Long time being a couple of years at least, because we got so into the Vote Whiskey campaign and it became our life. And then what actually was kind of crazy, and I could go into like the business side of this pretty deeply, which I'll spare you guys unless people are really interested in it.
I already wrote down a question earlier when we were talking that I wanted to know if any of the big boys were lobbying against you to open a distillery in Tennessee, because there's a couple of big boys in Tennessee that I would not think would want. They may not put up a huge fuss because a rising tide raises all boats kind of idea, but at the same time, I think they would raise a stink.
So there's I'm not going to name names, but there was so when we got into the law change and it just got deeper and deeper, like finally, I mean, we sought a Tennessee State General Attorney's opinion here from Tennessee, and it didn't come back favorable, and that just meant more work for us, and so. But the town was just really getting behind us. And
do any of the distilleries rhyme with nickel or backfaniels that lobbied against you?
They actually do not rhyme with either one of those. So what happened is we started, we started our lobbying process, and then it became a state issue, because back in 2009, see, a lot of people don't realize that back in 2009, it was a county by county thing. There was a representative from that municipality at the state level that said that if they didn't stand up and say, I wanted this, it didn't happen.
Yep.
Right? That changed. So our law changed that. In 2013, what our bill said, House Bill 102, Senate Bill 129 said, if there is liquor by the drink and packaged retail sales in that municipality, you can also get a license to distill. So it opened up the rest of the state. Huh. The other part of that is there were lots of amendments in those bills. And one of the amendments was the distance requirements, not for schools or churches. That was in there. And so that was a challenge in and of itself. But no, the distance requirements between distilleries was in there. So I'm not going to say you guys can figure this out, which distilleries are really close to other distilleries. Think about that for a second. Mm-hmm. And those distilleries got in on this bill. But the guys that were already there, they may have been the ones that were lobbying against this. So we were trying we were forming new bills. We didn't want to go through a referendum, because if we went through a referendum, it would have rolled us like a year, and it would have killed it.
Yeah.
Right? It would have killed our momentum. It would have killed everything. We had and referendums through signatures, right? So like there was a distillery in Tennessee that hired dozens of people wearing "Bring Whiskey Back to Chattanooga" shirts, going around and getting signatures pretending they were us, to try and have this sent to a referendum.
Dirty.
Okay.
Oh, interesting. They did the exact opposite of what I thought they would have done.
They pretended to support us in order to kill us.
Right. That's insane.
So you guys got through.
Yeah.
Like, the end of the day.
What was that lawyer bill like? That's what we all want to know.
Man, that kind of goes back to the local support. Now, I know that there were other efforts in Tennessee between 2009 and 13, even though the 2009 and 13 bills were the two main bills. If you went to Representative Carr, who was behind 2009 and 13, I think Carr would tell you that the 13 bill was a lot harder than the 2009 bill. In fact, he said that to me. That was because 2009, it was all brand new, right? It was new, and it was county by county or municipality by municipality. So a bunch of guys stood up and said, we don't want it, or they didn't say they wanted it, not a big deal. But in 13, it wasn't that, right? It was like, if there's liquor by the drink and there's packaged retail sales, you're getting it. If somebody comes in and says, "Oh yeah, good, I want to build a distillery in this municipality," too bad representative that doesn't want it.
Yeah.
If this bill goes through, then that municipality is a very good chance they're going to get a distillery, right? So there was a huge fight on the floor that ensued because of that, right? So it just became a very difficult bill. It was a dogfight, man, until the very end. So what happened was when we started getting close to like the success of this bill actually going through, I was lining up investors. Because investors weren't going to put money in Chattanooga Whiskey unless like we could actually pull this off.
Were they finding you, or you were finding them?
Actually, there was so much local momentum.
That's what I thought.
If I'm ever going to write a book about starting a distillery or starting a business in general,
this is a startup city, man.
Local momentum is key, man.
Right.
And there was a lot of local momentum, and we were very fortunate to have that. But the Vote Whiskey campaign, we had like 40 articles in the newspaper. I mean, it was very closely followed locally.
It almost reminds me of the Airbnb fight that people are having now, where the Airbnbs are, it's county by county and all that kind of stuff that's going on. It's interesting because every other county in Tennessee, except for Davidson County, kind of got something that was nice for the homeowners.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Davidson County was like, because of the tourism, it's like, oh wait, no, we're not going to follow that. And I just moved, because I was smack dab in the middle of 2 Airbnbs.
Yeah,
I could only have strippers knocking on my door for so long, thinking that I was my neighbor, but. That's a story for another day.
I was reading an article that John passed me, but you had my attention there for a minute.
Well, no, we literally had strippers knock on our door thinking that we were a bachelorette party. And I go, well, you're a good looking dude and all that, but I think you got to go over to that house next door.
That's how John and I met.
Yeah,
actually.
Yeah.
Jared was there in a cowboy hat and leather chaps.
With a bottle of whiskey in his hand.
So you get these parallel paths. So you get the investors, and it's that build that opened the door for you. And then how long was it before? Because you had to find a distiller, and your distiller is pretty damn good. Tell us a little bit about him.
Well, so here's what's crazy, right? Is like we were essentially, you could call just the 2 founders, right? Me and Joe, like a marketing company. We weren't really, but that's what we were doing, right? Mm-hmm. When the rubber actually met the road and money came in, it was go time and we had to go build a distillery. That next year was very tumultuous. And so, Chattanooga Whiskey's ups and downs over the last 8 years, it was very much roller coaster-ish with loops and twists and turns. And there was a year where 2014, before we built the experimental distillery, that I wasn't sure we were going to survive. Thanks to again, local support, awesome investor group, made of, kind of friends and family here locally. They believed in us and it stayed alive. So then here's like, we had this huge grand idea of building like a place like this, like Riverfront Distillery first, trying to go from 0 to 1 million miles an hour. That's what that would have been like. And I think that would have killed us.
Yeah.
So I think we were really fortunate in hindsight to kind of be forced into a way smaller operation. And we had, you guys may or may not know this, but 3 or 4 times we had photos on the either front page of the business section or the Times Free Press that showed what the distillery was going to look like. It was a 50,000 square foot distillery with like all these people walking around it. And we just could not make it work. And eventually, because of 2014 and kind of the tumultuous times, it forced a reset button. And the reset button was basically me looking at the board and the shareholders and going, look, guys, I know you just want to see like that we can make whiskey for real. So let's just do something really modest. And hopefully it's in a good location. Hopefully, pound for pound, it's a great experience and we can make some great whiskey. I can't promise anything other than that. So we built the experimental distillery, but right before we built it, you asked, how did I, learn distilling and this, I didn't. I mean, I was thinking to myself, like, I'm not going to be, if we're going to make a great whiskey, I'm not going to be the distiller. Larry Ebersold, the master distiller at LDI for a long time, he and I were chatting quite a bit, and he said, Tim, if you're going to find a great distiller, you should probably look for a great brewer. And that's where I think we found the best in the world. And so Grant McCracken and I met through his buddy Brian Sprance at New Riff.
And his dad, Ernie.
His what?
Have you ever seen the movie Kingpin? Ernie McCracken?
Yeah, I've got it. This comes up, actually.
You're an idiot.
No.
I've told you.
I need to watch it. Actually,
I've told you always to call me Ernie or Big Ern.
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
So yes, so we talk over the phone, and I really we just connected over the phone really well. Super humble guy, and you have to almost extract information. He's extremely knowledgeable, extremely bright, but in terms of hey, how good are you? He's not going to sit here and be like, oh, I'm the best. those words would never come out of his mouth. So I was like, you know what, we connected well, so I'm going to get he and his wife, and they had a baby boy at the time, and now they got 2 kids, and they live here in Chattanooga, but I flew him down for a Brewers Festival here in Chattanooga. We spent the weekend together, our wives hung out, and we just connected really well. And at the end of those 3 days or 2 days or whatever, we did a whiskey tasting together, and I just, said, dude, you're a guy. Are you in? And he was living in Boston at the time. And he's like, I'm in. And we just made it work. And he started December of 2014. He started when we started building the experimental distillery. We built the experimental distillery in 4 or 5 months. We opened up the end of March of 2015. And this was when it was like, I had these really large industry influencers, guys that own some pretty big brands that have been around for a long time. I just had become friends with because maybe they saw themselves kind of in my shoes when they were younger, and they thought what we were doing was interesting. They were saying, Tim, when you build the distillery, make the recipe that you already are selling, just put as much away as possible. We did the opposite. Because Grant came in and was like, malt, man. It's like malt is where it's at, but we love bourbon. We've been bourbon. So that set us on the path of doing a new recipe every week, and we've been doing that for 4.5 years. So then that set us to where we are today. So anyways, that's a lot, but no, I'm not the distiller.
I think I've dealt or been in a little bit of your same shoes where what I want to know is, what was it like to walk in to that boardroom or the meeting and sort of swallow your pride and say, hey, I think we need to show proof of concept first. Instead of building out the Subaru dealership that we're now sitting in, you need to build the smaller thing or whatever it is first and show proof of concept. Like, yes, people locally, people across the United States will buy our product, but we need to actually do it before building this big, really nice place that you're in here. Like, what was it like walking into that boardroom?
So first of all, we were in survival mode. And after going through law change and just the amount of community support, to just close up shop wasn't an option. And second of all, the relationships that I had with my silent partners and shareholders was really solid. I think they fully trusted me. And the picture that we painted, though on a much smaller scale, was still an exciting one. And it's like, hey, if this thing is going to move forward and survive, this seems like a pretty cool plan. Man, we just, even though it was really small, we executed really well. I mean, if you look at our reviews of the experimental distillery, they're like none other. I mean, they're the best thing to do in Chattanooga, and it's a 3,000 square foot distillery, And then when we started putting whiskey away, even though it was white whiskey, people were tasting it and going, it's really good white whiskey. We think it might turn into something much greater. We said that, hey, the experimental distillery will have this many tourists and it'll do this much in revenue. And it was 1 year, right? But it was the first year, but we hit all of our numbers. And for, our partners,
That's proof. That's proof
yes,
of concept.
Proof was in the pudding. Okay.
It worked.
Then we stood around and said, are we going to try this again? Are we going to try the Big Daddy again? And fortunately, everybody said it was worth it. And
people skip that step, though. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A lot of times people skip that step. You build the
You mean the POC or just the...
Yeah, they skip the POC. They build the big, gorgeous distillery and start having weddings in it and making vodka or whatever it is. And they skip that step of proof of concept to where they're just throwing money at it. But, is it going to work? And they don't do the grassroots, coming up to.
Yeah.
And I love that about you.
Well, and
I love it.
I have to ask Tim, because you think of a lot of places that are out there, they're either going to source to keep the lights on, or they're going to make clear liquid to keep the lights on, or there's other things that are going on.
Yep.
You guys were sourcing, but if you think about the story that you're just telling us, you had a limited amount of time.
we did
to actually get things done. You were like, this is how much stuff we bought. And then when you're getting into 2016, 2017, you're like, all right, we're not going to have that much MGP left.
Right.
And so there is a driving force. Do you almost think it's the fact that you guys didn't have a net that drove you to be successful? And then what made you not decide to do any clear liquid on top? Was it just one of those things where we're married to whiskey is what we want to do, we don't want to get involved in this other stuff? Not that there's anything wrong with it, but like, was it we're gonna survive without a parachute, without a net, we have our plan, we got to stick to that, and then we're just going to move forward?
So a couple things. First of all, we're called Chattanooga Whiskey. We want to make the best whiskey in the world. We are so fortunate that we had the opportunity to build a smaller distillery, because without it, I don't think we would have the liquid we have here today in Chattanooga Whiskey 91 and 111. It's not that I don't think, I know we would not have the recipe in the liquid that is coming out now. That we take the hard road, and we haven't done the things to create the cash flow from fast moving goods like gin or vodka, etc., because we want to make the best whiskey, A, and B. Sometimes it feels like the path of most resistance, but it's focusing on a single product. And we've been through, before we started the experimental distillery, we were very unfocused, and being unfocused punished us. I didn't want to be unfocused anymore. So anyway,
I see parallels, at least with us and the podcast, in the sense of, it's never a quick play. You know, for us, it's not something where we want to rush out there, and everything we did was a slow play, to the fact that we did Instagram videos before we even got the podcasting equipment. And it's like we figured out what our voice was. And then once we figured out what our voice was, it was like, all right, now it's time to start a podcast. Yep. And I feel like for you guys, it was, we don't know what the hell we're doing. We have this experimental distillery. We're going to figure out what our voice was.
Yep.
And that's what our Instagram was for us. And then once you figured it out, it's like, okay, now we can go ramp that. And that is what this Chattanooga 91 and Chattanooga 111 is. So let's get into that, because you guys have been talking about MGP for a while, and we've been drinking this whole time, everybody. I know that's important for us to let you know, as we've been sipping on this 91 and the 111. It is a Tennessee high malt. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about what that actually means first and foremost.
Yep. Okay. So thanks to the experimental distillery and focusing on high malt recipes and doing hundreds of them, for the first 2 years of the experimental distillery, we put away over 100 barrels of different high malt recipes. And when we built the Riverfront Distillery in 2017, the month leading up to opening Riverfront Distillery, our team here at Chattanooga Whiskey tasted through 100 barrels of different high malt recipes. So we had already made our bed with high malt, no matter what. That's what we wanted to do.
And that was the first one that you guys actually released at the
in August of 2017 was batch 001 was Tennessee high malt. So it wasn't this recipe, though. We weren't just a traditional bourbon. A lot of people were saying you can't make bourbon here in Tennessee, so we had to answer that question all the time. Then, people would say, well, then you're Tennessee whiskey, right? No, we don't charcoal filter. Why don't you do the Lincoln County process? Because we don't want to do the Lincoln County process.
Yeah, screw the Lincoln County process.
We like the taste of an unfiltered bourbon better. And we were doing high malt. We were doing longer fermentations. We were doing a lot of things. We were putting a lot of effort into making a more complex high malt, malt forward bourbon. So what is it? Well, it's authentically, genuinely made here in Southeast Tennessee, right? So, of course, we're going to celebrate that. And it is a straight bourbon whiskey, but it's not a Lincoln County processed whiskey. So, Tennessee high malt, that's what it is. That's what we came up with.
That's who we are.
And so we coined and trademarked it, and that's our own style of bourbon whiskey from Tennessee. It's called Tennessee high malt. It's 4 grains. Of those 4 grains, 3 of the grains are select specialty malts. It's a 7-day fermented beer before it becomes whiskey. I mean, that's a long fermentation, twice the average fermentation. It's distilled at 120 proof off the column. It goes into the barrel it comes off of our pot at 135, which is pretty low. It goes into to retain flavor. It goes into the barrel at 115, also low to retain flavor. We use 2 different types of chars and a toast, our own toast profile, made an independent stave.
And you talked about that on the tour. For somebody that said he didn't know a lot about distilling, you certainly know a whole hell of a lot about it now. You guys have a signature char and a signature toast method, which is the 91, right?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what actually goes into that?
So it's the signature. So we use, before 91 enters the Solera barrel, it is aged, fully matured in both 4 char and 3 char, but it's the toast profile that is our own signature toast profile, which is Profile 91. That is a 35-minute toast, and it kind of it's like a slow rising heat, and it has a peak at the end of it. And we believe that the complexity of both barrels together in the Solera barrel creates a really nicely rich and complex flavor. And that's what every step, right? The grain, the 4 grains, the 3 malts, the long fermentations, the low entry into the barrel, the different, toasts and chars. And in the toast, that toast profile creates a really nice confectionery note, we believe, in our whiskey. So we're just going after a richer, more complex whiskey. And I think it was stated when we were, earlier when we were tasting, when you taste this next to a traditional bourbon, you're like, dude, this whiskey is so full of flavor. It's just bold and rich. And that's kind of the best way you can describe it. And that's what we think we all, every step of the process, we get that bold richness and complexity out of it. And that is Tennessee High Malt to us. You have to do all that stuff to make Tennessee High Malt. You can't take any shortcuts.
You said your fermentation is 2 times longer than anybody else. What's like the average fermentation, and what does that allow you to do? What does that 7 days allow you to come out with versus whatever else?
So average is going to be probably like 3 to 4 days to about 6% alcohol by volume before it goes into the still. That's going to be over probably an 85 degree or higher heat fermentation temperature. So what happens is the hotter the yeast gets, the harder the faster it produces alcohol, the harder it works. So it works itself into a frenzy, basically, and it dies off faster. The quicker that it dies off, the more esterification from the yeast that comes with that. Usually that's like a very banana-y type flavor that comes from that.
That's no bueno in my book.
Same.
I don't drink bananas.
Yeah,
I'm allergic, in fact.
When and with that kind of can come an astringency as well. So what happens is it takes a long time for the barrel to cover that up. You know what I mean? Like now you're like, all right, we got 3 grains. It's mainly corn, rye and a little bit of barley, or corn, wheat, and barley. It was a quick fermentation because we needed to turn that fermenter over quickly, right? Because that's the bottleneck in the operation.
Sure.
But, 3, 4, 5, 6 years later, guess what? You're still tasting that esterification from the yeast in that. And the amount of work that we put into our recipe, we want that recipe to shine through. We want that recipe to marry up with the barrel really nicely, and for you to taste the complexity of the grains out of the barrel. That's why we slow it down. We chill that yeast out so the yeast doesn't work as hard, and it allows the complexity of the grains to shine through in the end so that you don't have as much esterification from the yeast.
I don't think we actually touched on this, but Grant did come down from Boston. He was at a very famous beer company up there, which is near and dear to my heart, being a Bostonian and Sam Adams, because it's not typical for a whiskey company to actually do those things. Are those things that Grant has kind of brought over from beer?
Yeah,
100%.
Where he knows, okay, this needs a little bit of a longer fermentation.
Yep.
It's a higher malt, because I almost think even in Tennessee, right, you have H. Clark, a lot of his stuff is malty.
Yep.
Because he was a beer brewer first and foremost, and then got into the whiskey game.
Yep.
That malt and the longer fermentation,
Yep.
all of that stuff is carried over from beer.
Yep, it is. And I think whiskey traditionally has been as much or probably more about the barrel than it has been about the grains. And in beer, it's about the recipe, right? And so you cannot make great whiskey without making great beer first. And it costs money, and there's an expertise to focusing on the beer aspect of whiskey. And just from day one of Grant, being here with Chattanooga Whiskey and starting the experimental distillery, we have focused on the beer first. We just never wanted to just rely on the barrel. Even though the barrel is critically important, don't get me wrong, it doesn't need to be 65% of the flavor profile.
I think about, I have a friend who's a brewer, and he said, Whiskey's a little easier because it's so high proof that it's going to kill off all of the other stuff. Beer's a hard thing to kind of master because anything can really get in there and mess it up just because it's not going to be as high proof, and whiskey's going to kill it all. All the bad stuff that tried to get in there, whiskey's like, oh, you know what? Guess what? I'm 135 proof coming off the still.
Yeah.
Like you let John put his finger into the beer earlier today.
Oh, everybody lets
that was
That's the best part.
Are you telling me everybody's fingers have been in that beer?
Let me tell you something. That was a fake fermentation. So don't tell him. That was
Mother of God.
Yeah, no, we actually.
I hope you dumped it after.
No, John thinks he put it into the real product, but
it did taste like Quaker Instant Oatmeal.
All it should have tasted like
Hence
was
the malt.
sweat, because you were sweating like a. I don't even know.
Bob, what did you do over there?
Okay.
Like crazy.
We do have Bob Little that is hanging out with us, and I think he just broke the table.
This is going to be the flagship. This Chattanooga Whiskey 91. This is it. This is, and John, I love hearing you talk about this because you're passionate about it. But this 91 is the Solera aged, if you will, product that's coming out of here. And this Solera is freaking cool. You know what I thought we were going to do when we walked in there?
What's that?
I actually thought we were going to take a sauna.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to take a sauna because this giant Solera
That'd be the coolest
looks,
sauna I've ever been in.
I mean, there was a sauna.
It was missing the rocks, like the hot rocks.
Well, I didn't
You just
get in
didn't
it.
see them.
Did you get in it? The rocks are on the inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got in it. You didn't get in it?
It's like a giant wooden barrel-looking round thing that looks like a sauna. It's awesome.
It's really unique. It's we're one of the only people who do this type of Solera finishing process. Chattanooga Whiskey 91 is our new flagship product. It's a malt forward bourbon, and I am passionate about it because, MGP and LDI make a great product. There's no doubt about that. They make incredible product. And as somebody who sourced a product at the very beginning, we had to make a better product than what they made for us. And like Tim has been saying, we've put a lot of time starting at the experimental distillery, experimenting with different recipes, different grains, yeast strains, barrels. And finally, we settled with this product right here. I definitely am passionate because I do believe that what we have created here as the only Tennessee high malt whiskey is a better product. My goal as, the guy who's been a part since the ground floor and who heads up sales is I want to be the best sipping whiskey from Tennessee. I'm out in the market. I'm tasting people regularly from Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, soon to be Florida. Our goal has been to grow deep. We didn't just want to open up 15, 20 states right away. We want to put feet on the street. We want to get people excited. We want to get liquid to lips. We want to tell them that this is a product that we've actually seen go from grain to glass versus going and sourcing a product. I've watched these grains be offloaded from an 18-wheeler at our distillery. And how could I not be passionate about what we've created here? Chattanooga Whiskey 91 and Chattanooga Whiskey 111, we created these products to change the game. We've had a rule since I started with this company that says rules are good, change them. And this is what we did. Yes, we're a straight bourbon whiskey. No, we're not a Tennessee whiskey. We are Tennessee high malt.
I like how there was a Forbes article that came out recently that said you refuse to call your whiskey bourbon, but I just want to mention, and we don't have to go deep into
we can
this.
go deep.
No. I mean, I'm just looking at this self-guided tour part 1, Tennessee high malt and cooking. So here it is, self-guided tour for me to come in here and look at. Third question in the frequently asked question document: will Tennessee high malt be a straight bourbon? Yes, with an exclamation point.
Absolutely.
So I have debunked a Forbes article right now, and that's the most I'll say about that. But I will say that I find it interesting, given the climate of Tennessee whiskey and a lot of the other things that are out there. There's a heavy wheat presence in a lot of the stuff that's coming out. Pennington's has a wheat whiskey that just came out, a Tennessee wheat whiskey. And, we all know that Bellmead and Nelson's Greenbrier is going back to a wheat whiskey profile. The only other high malted bourbon I have seen is Old Elk out of Colorado. And Zeke and I have been all about that Old Elk. When we had it, we just said, this goes down super, super, super easy. And we should start talking about this 91 first, because it goes down very, very easy. And I said the nose, it's kind of like sweet tea with a big old squeeze of honey. with some malt in there too. It's
Doesn't
like,
get much more southern than that.
no, it's a very southern profile, but it's a very sweet tea profile for me with the honey malt. And I'm surprised because it's 75% yellow corn, 12% malted rye, 7% caramel, and 6% honey malt. And that honey malt really comes through.
It's phenomenal.
It's a 4-grain Tennessee high malt. There's so many different ways you guys
Straight
can brand
bourbon.
this.
Yeah,
Straight-
by the way.
yeah.
Straight bourbon.
Well, on the straight bourbon, the answer, the refuse part, straight bourbon whiskey is a TTB designation, right? Number one. Number two, so by definition, we are a straight bourbon whiskey,
Correct.
right?
You meet the definition.
Yeah. So number two, you've got a Scotch section in the retail store. You've got a bourbon section. You've got a Tennessee whiskey section, right? Which Tennessee whiskey is usually along with the bourbon. Cool. We can live in either bourbon or Tennessee whiskey, but if we just go out there and it just says Tennessee high malt on the front, retailers are probably going to end up. They're just going to assume it's a Scotch or something, right? So, or a single malt,
American single malt
an
section.
American single malt, and they're going to stick us in the single malt section. So that's why it says straight bourbon whiskey on it.
How did you land on 91 proof? I've wondered this about so many
Great
different
question.
distilleries. Like, I get it. It speaks to the past. It brings ghosts from the past up to the future and, all that crap. But, like, was the whiskey just as good at 90 proof or 100 proof?
We kind of touched on this earlier.
Yeah, it was fate that we landed on barrel number 91 out of the experimental distillery. And, 1816 Reserve was always a 90 proof. And the fact that our favorite recipe to move forward was barrel number 91, we're like, well, we got it.
So moving it up one proof wasn't a big deal.
No,
You know what I mean? It wasn't
no.
a big deal.
I feel like it's their Spinal Tap moment.
Yes.
Like, but this one goes to
Yes.
11. Like, this is 90 proof. It's
Yeah.
like, but this is one more.
That's right. That's right.
Well, listen, you guys know this, being bourbon connoisseurs. If it was barrel number 89, I mean, people in this industry would be like, what, 89 proof?
The hell's 89 proof?
what-
Never seen that before.
I mean, you kind of, right now, you really, to have like a full flavored whiskey, got to be over 90 proof. So 91 worked out.
Full flavored whiskey is appropriate for what we tasted today, don't you think?
It tastes heavier, like it's thicker
Yeah.
than a 91 proof. It had some body to it, and that is, I think, what
Pass
malt
me that
can bring
111.
to it.
We set out
sometimes.
to make a richer, bolder, more complex bourbon than what's out there today.
And there's just a whole bunch of malt that gets you on the first sip. Honey, chocolate. I said I can almost taste all of the different grains, and there are certain parts that hit you at a certain times.
Oh, they got a good cork. They got a good cork, though, baby.
That just made me.
Well, no.
That's what it's about.
I do have to tell you, because Bob over there had one of their older corks. And I do have to tell you, because I did have a bottle like that, that cork sucked.
Hold on,
And-
we're going to listen to this
Thank
cork.
you.
We're going to see.
No, you can hardly even get that one out.
I got it out.
I would always get it stuck in there. And thankfully, you moved to a new cork.
Sure.
Is this a
And there's actually
lifestyle- is this a
and I
lifestyle
do want to
podcast?
touch on this. There's actually something really funny about the reason that we have a cork with our bourbon, and I think it's important that Tim probably tells you that
Well,
story.
when we went from the wine cork,
Yeah, the wine cork sucked.
yeah, no, I agree.
Try
I agree.
being a
Yeah, I
bartender
was about to
and
say,
using a
talk to
corkscrew to
every
get that thing out of the
bartender.
bottle. I mean, you got to remember.
And I can tell you, because I loved, and it goes back to when I met you in Nashville all those years ago, I got one of the old wine cork cast strength
Yeah.
bourbons. I would sit there and I'd be like, I like this bottle, but I don't go to it that much because it's a pain in the ass
Sure.
to get it out.
Yeah. So the new cork is still a one-piece cork, and it was kind of
It's
like
great.
honors our history.
It's our
right?
style
No,
too.
it's
you
great
know?
because it's a full cork. It doesn't have that wood at the top, or it's all cork.
Yeah.
But at least I can pull the thing out without having to get a corkscrew.
Well, we just
It's
wanted
great.
to make you happy.
Yeah,
So-
that's all this was. It was for Dad's.
I'm
drinking
sorry
bourbon.
I said it sucked, but
No, we got a lot of pushback from the beginning, heading up sales for this company, trying to get bartenders, if they're running out of a bottle and they're trying to make cocktails and they're busy as hell, they have to use a corkscrew. It was tough, but there's a reason that we had these wine corks originally, and it actually worked out to be a staple of our product.
Bob's
There's no
over
one-
there saying, sorry I caused so much controversy bringing the
okay,
old
man.
bottle.
Just for the record, I did open this today without a corkscrew.
We needed a corkscrew at first,
corker.
then we started to elevate the
Bob
cork.
Corker.
The Bob Corker. That was actually the name
of our
corking machine.
Yeah.
We called it the Bob Corker. He's a good friend of ours. And I'm just going to say this. Makers has the red wax.
Yeah.
Chattanooga Whiskey has the cork. You don't see raw cork really sitting, other than a rum that comes to mind, Kirk and Sweeney. They are the only other ones. Bibb and Tucker is doing the cork. This is a part of who we are. This cork came at the very beginning, right when we started working with LDI. This cork was a part of the package.
The only time I've seen this much cork was in Jared's bats when he was playing baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. And his driver.
And I still couldn't hit my weight.
Yep, we heard.
By the way,
I thought you were going to say in the locker room.
We're staying the night.
sure it was in his bat?
I'll show you the cork later, John.
The cork was a funny story because we had set our launch party back in 2012, and the cork we had ordered was like 5 weeks behind. This just goes back into like we didn't know what the hell we were doing.
Startup mode,
So
like, what are we gonna do?
Like we get a phone call from our cork supplier, and we're like, they're gonna be there in July, and we're like, yeah, but
and you were like, quick, go to Total Wine.
We're like, our
party.
launch party is in April.
Yeah.
So he goes, our cork supplier was like, well, you could stick a wine cork in it. And I was like, done, send me wine corks. And that's how we got started.
That's how it started.
There is some schmuck out there that's a wine cork salesman, isn't there? Like a cork salesman.
There's
He
lots
walks around.
there's lots of cork
He's talking about like the pithiness of a cork.
Yeah. I love our cork. It's a part of I love our cork. I love all corks, shapes and sizes.
Big cork
I
guy.
love all shapes and sizes.
He's a big cork guy.
Huge cork guy.
Yeah. But you know, it's just a part of our package, and of course, God. What I'm trying to say is our package would not look nearly as good without the cork on top of it. No,
What he's trying to say is that all corks are the same when the lights are out.
look.
The cork was smaller, and you went to a much larger
We
cork.
did, and you know, you can't have a package without a cork.
Correct. Correct.
I'm leaving all of
It
this.
started small and got bigger.
Yeah. It
What he's trying to say is over time, there was an
the
enlargement.
cork was inadequate, and we enlarged to a bigger cork.
The problem is we had a hard time getting our hands around the cork.
Bartenders had a harder time, not
What-
you.
what-
Cork
he's
would
doing-
actually break inside the bottle at first.
I mean, because it's thicker too. It's thicker and longer.
Oh,
and
it's substantial.
yes, let's talk about the whiskey
There
now.
we go.
Okay.
But it really was for bartenders. Like I said, this is a much easier cork enclosure. So the bartenders loved the cork.
And the 91, which I'm holding a 375 of. 375, that's awesome. The 91 is the Solera product, which we talked about, that looks like a Swedish
Solera.
sauna. Mm-hmm. Or is that where saunas are from?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll go
Norwegian?
with that.
Yeah, whatever. And that's the Solera one, which I thought when we tasted it had the best nose. I thought it was fantastic. It's so... I hate this. I hate that I'm about to say this.
It's okay.
It's so approachable.
Wow.
Do you know what I'm saying?
This
I
thing's
think
over.
approachable is important. Personally, I'm a big fan of the word approachable over the word smooth.
Sure.
I think if they kind of go hand in hand. So
Right.
I think approachable does mean like when you first take a sip of this, do you have to take 2 or 3 more sips to warm up to it, or the first sip you take, you're
Right.
like, oh, I can drink that.
Palate
It's
warms
easy.
up.
It's
Palate warms up
dangerous.
immediately.
Yes. Like you told me earlier, it's dangerous. It's so nice. It's so good, but it has it drinks a little bit hotter than 91 proof, I think.
It doesn't drink hotter than 91 to me. It drinks bolder.
It's got to be the rye.
And
It's got to
it's
be the
richer.
rye that has more kick.
I said it's a light tingle on my lips, but nothing crazy. It's just enough to let you know it's there.
Yeah.
It's like when you went to go kiss a girl and she didn't really get into it. Like she just gave you enough. Like she gave you the peck. It wasn't like a deep kiss.
That's when you uncork the 111.
It wasn't a huge tingle. It was just like a nice little.
Well, when you guys,
Did
here's
you bite the
thing.
cork?
No, I'm not talking about the cork. I'm talking about the rye content.
When we busted out that bottle of 1816 Reserve and passed it around, your first words were, and listen, there is 10-year LDI in that, right? It's a combination of 3-year and
Tell them what I
10-year,
said.
right?
Tell them what I said.
You said that you felt like 91 and 111 were flavor bombs compared to Reserve, and that Reserve almost, you didn't use the word, tasted almost flat, but
I said bland.
Bland, yeah. You said it tasted
And I'm an MGP
bland.
whore.
Yeah, and we've been
Admittedly.
and that 1816 Reserve won double gold in San Francisco 2 years ago.
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah,
I hear you. I'm just saying.
Yep.
You and I could both get started on that.
Right, I'm with
just
you.
saying.
I'm with you.
It did, And, well, maybe that doesn't mean anything. But still, it is. It's been a really good seller for Chattanooga Whiskey. It's been our bread and butter for a long time. And when you taste them side by side, you said one is way more flavorful than the other. And that is what we're after.
But you guys have done a good job. This is coming in at $30. The MSRP is going to be around 30, whether or not that's 35
on the high end. Exactly. Yeah. In a range. Yep.
For a $30 pour to have that much flavor, and I don't even like to say smooth or approachable, it's just crushable. It's one of those ones where you have a pour and then you have another pour of it.
Yep.
It's one of those ones where you sit there and all of a sudden you're looking and you're like, shit, I just drank through a third of the bottle. Or like you're sitting around with your friends. And if you sit around with your friends on a night, that thing's going to be gone easy.
This is for the whiskey drinker who is just getting into it and the whiskey enthusiast.
I think there's enough flavor for the enthusiast.
We wanted to appeal to the masses with these products.
It's going to change, and we had this discussion earlier. Like it's going to change a little bit because every time you pull off 8 to 10 barrels off of that out of that Solera, you're going to refill it with something else. So
never goes empty.
It never goes empty, and whatever's going into that thing, because it's going to all be based on demand, it could potentially get older. It probably will get older.
It will get older.
Because of how much you're making every day. It'll get older and older. So, like, to me, that Solera is just going to get, it's already fine and solid. It's already flavor bomb, like I said earlier, but it's going to get better and better and better, most likely, as you go. And I think that's fun. I think that's awesome.
It's unique. It's our style.
Actually, Grant would be really happy to hear you say that, because the appreciating the evolution of a product, we are just really proud of what we make, and it doesn't mean that you have to love it. We're still really proud of it. And I think that our team can stand here today and say that we don't think we could have come out with a better product, and it will change over time, and we're excited about how it's going to evolve.
It was the same as, the 1816. We sourced it at around 3.5 years old. That product got all the way up to 10. We don't just want to bottle everything, once it becomes a straight bourbon whiskey or a bourbon whiskey. We want to let these products mature. We want to let them evolve. And we truly believe that what we have right here is a quality product, but it's only going to continue to get better.
One other thing, like in terms of transparency in the industry, we're wanting to be as transparent as anyone or more. I mean, like, ask us anything online, in person, whatever.
What's your social security number?
Well, I can tell you that it's got a 4 in it. All right, so
me too.
Me too. God, we are such best friends.
I don't have a 4 in mine.
Whoa.
Well, you're out. You go play with your cork over there, and we're gonna.
Here's the thing, right? Like, the stuff, like liquid, it changes for a lot of people, but they don't want to talk about the change, right? People know it when you pull a 9 off the bottle or a 12 off the bottle, right? Then you're like, it's changing, but they don't talk about the change. Celebrate the change. Whiskey is an evolution. It's changing all the time. It's in a barrel. It's in a natural environment. Like, it's going to change.
Talking about the 111, we're all kind of in agreement. The 91 is damn good. Bob, what do you think over there? You like the 91?
Yeah, I was going to step in.
Hey, Bob.
Hey! I was going to leave the bourbon connoisseur to John and Jared over here, but, I had both of these in a glass in front of me, the 91.
That was a good save.
Great save.
And the 111, and I'm sitting here going back and forth. The 91 is standing up to the 111. The flavors aren't muted from the 111 to the 91. The flavors in the 91 are a little bit different, not as vanilla forward as the 111 was. Yeah. But I mean, it's a little different, and it's round for round, sip for sip, and you can go back and forth.
It's awesome.
And from a normal guy walking down, looking on the shelf, you've got one product at 111. Yeah, it's $10 more, one at 91. Typically, I'm the kind of guy that's going to go for the 111. I'll spend the extra $10.
Yeah.
But man, I'm being honest, that 91 holds up great.
Awesome.
And I think that's a point I was going to bring up, but I wanted to ask before you got into it.
Yeah.
Why did you call it 111? Was it just because of the proof, or was it the 111th barrel?
No, yeah. No,
so
the 111, we were at 113.6 proof. First of all, that was an arbitrary number. It's not exactly easy to remember. It's 113.6. It has a 0.6 on it.
And I love your stickers that made fun of marathon stickers that was 113.6.
We can still do that. We just won't have the decimal point on it. The 111 was we felt like an approachable cast strength product. Also, here's the thing: LDI, MGP, they barrel at over 120. I think it may be 125. we barrel at 115. I mean, to try and consistently hit 113.6 proof just wasn't going to happen. So we wanted to get something as close as possible, and we thought 111 had a really nice ring to it. Happens to be the highway that connects Chattanooga Whiskey to our cornfields up in Riddleton, Tennessee, which is kind of cool.
John, that was a great job marketing. I was saying that a little slow. That was a great job marketing.
Thank you.
So Bob hit the nail on the head.
I think he did
Bob
too.
hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
And he and I both think that actually the nose on the 91, just sniffing it, the nose on the 91 is well-rounded. I really like the nose on the 91. It's awesome. I think the 111 comes in a little bit young. It smells more corn. You know what I mean? It comes in like that. But the Solera kind of, and maybe
The cask isn't Solera finished. Only the 91 is Solera
that's what I was saying. The
finished.
Solera might pull some of that out,
Sure.
or maybe it's just the proof that kind of pulls some of that out. I don't know what it is, but I love the nose on the 91, but I actually like the flavor profile of the 111.
Awesome.
And we mixed them.
Sure.
And I think Bob's with me.
I'm with you too. I said for the nose on the 111, I said the nose is citrus and butterscotch. And that citrus is a youthful citrus. Like that's the thing that I think that always kind of smells young to me. But the taste is like dark fruit, chocolate, all that kind of stuff.
cherry.
And it's like, I love the taste of that 111 with the nose and the finish of the 91, even though I think the 91 is still bold and has great flavor, and I still got honey, chocolate, all that, but the proof of the 111, I like to be able to have one or two.
Yeah.
Like I like to sip it and not go through a third of a bottle and
So
kind of
you're
look
gonna
back at
gravitate
it.
towards 111 for that reason.
I'm going to gravitate towards a higher proof, but I also need a 91 proof. Like if I'm working late or I'm doing something like that, like I'm editing, I don't want to be sipping 120 proof whiskey or
It creeps up on you.
yeah. And then you're like, crap, I had 3 when I should have had 2, and now I can't concentrate. It's like 91 is nice for
It's
just
the everyday sipper.
Yeah.
It's kind of how and being out in the market, what's so great about these products is 1816, the source product, a lot of people would gravitate to the cask because it was the higher proof, bolder flavors. What's been so cool to see is that with Chattanooga Whiskey 91 and Chattanooga Whiskey 111, it's 50-50. People love both of the products. There's not one that really stands out more than the other one. That, in my book, is a success. We're introducing 2 products that are approachable to the cask strength drinker and to the everyday sipper. I'm really excited to get these out into the market here in the next week or two to start showing people why.
Don't be afraid to mix them together.
Yeah, sure.
That's
So that means you have to buy them both.
you have to buy them both.
Correct.
But if you mix it together, you guys should try doing it since you have them both there.
We've done everything with these products. We've mixed them.
Tim said he didn't. Tim said he doesn't.
I like the sound of that.
Well, I've had a million different
Experiment with him right there. Pour him
Try it
half
out.
and half.
Cool.
I like the sound of that.
Let me just do that one more time. My wedding ring,
Yep.
bottle pop.
Oh, God.
Wow.
You do have good corks for bottle pops.
Thank you. I've worked really hard.
Sweet mother of God.
So Tim,
This
you
is
were
gonna be
saying
a
something.
big
I cut you
action.
off.
You really poured a lot in that thing, and now you...
This is
gonna be a big
communion
pour.
right here now. That's
is
what it is.
communion,
We're all
yeah.
going to pass this around.
And we're all friends here. It's
Tim, why don't
fine.
you start us off since you've never tried it before?
Mix it up a little bit first.
I've never had Chattanooga.
You've never
whiskey.
had the company that you start's whiskey before.
So when it comes to
Do you know what a high malt is?
Actually, will you tell me what it is? I want to hear from you.
It's something that you guys made.
Yeah.
It's
Is that considered
IP.
a high rye? What's the percentage
No.
you have? Is that considered
12%.
a high rye? Is it considered a low rye? 12%? That's a low rye,
Well,
right?
here's the thing, right? Like generally over a 20% rye would typically be a high rye.
Right.
But none of that's malted. And in our case,
Exactly. That's what's weird.
in our case, a 12%
Tastes high rye.
is malted. So it
Right.
tastes high rye. I'll say this. You said you got a decent amount of corn off of 111. I don't get corn out of any of our products. And that's what I love. I love the debate. It's awesome. The differences of opinions. That's what I love about the malt for me is that the malt is so powerful that it tends to create the complexity and richness creates a balance and doesn't allow when I have a high corn whiskey, I'm not a fan of high corn whiskeys.
The corn is on the nose. The corn is on the nose, right? That's maybe I didn't make that clear. That was where I thought you got the corn from when you smelled it. When you taste it, though, all you get is a rye bomb. I don't understand how that's only 12% rye, but it tastes like a high rye bourbon.
The power of malt.
I'm in.
Here's the thing, like one of the reasons I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come here.
Oh, you're welcome.
There's a lot of consumer education that's going to happen, right?
Yeah, because it's not Scotch. When I read malt, I think Scotch, and it's not Scotch.
Yeah, right. So
But
you guys are here with us in the very beginning.
We haven't even launched the product.
Helping us get the word out about what the hell Tennessee High Malt means. And that it is a bourbon, but it is a malt-forward bourbon from Tennessee. This is awesome.
And I think Stranahan's...
you like the combination, don't you?
You guys, it's like you
like
guys
the
are
combination.
bartenders,
Okay.
and you just turned me on to, it's pretty easy.
The new 101.
Obviously, it's pretty easy to turn me on.
I know, that comes up...
Hey, the new 101 is going to be coming out next fall.
Yeah.
It is the
The dad's drinking bourbon signature blend.
Yeah, it's the Dad's Drinking Bourbon Reserve Tennessee High Malt.
There's already a 101 out there, man, and it rhymes with tiled working.
Hey, you've already fought some uphill battles. What's one more?
Heard that.
You'll be fine.
Call it Dad's Stash.
Is that a reference to
Depends
the
which
mustache?
stash. Yeah, exactly.
Like
No.
Zeke's mustache?
No, Zeke doesn't have a mustache anymore.
Remember last time we hung out, I had a mustache?
You did.
And we wore the same shirt and hat?
We went on a pick. Jared and I went to Wild Turkey and we did a Russell's Reserve pick.
Yeah.
And we wore the same outfit. So what we did is we wore the diapers, bottles, bourbon shirt, but then we both wore Boothill Blades hats.
Wow.
So it was one from each of us, right? And
I almost
we were
called Tim
twinsies.
to make sure he wasn't going to wear the same thing that I wore today, because these Chattanooga Whiskey shirts that I wear regularly,
That you don't have in fat guy size.
we're working on it.
Well, I have to say the future is looking amazingly bright for Chattanooga Whiskey. And so we've gone very, very long. This will probably be about an hour and 20-minute episode
Yes,
when
long.
all said and done. It's okay, though, because I think it was a great conversation. Is there anything you want to say before we go ahead and close out?
A few things. A, it's been fun hanging out with you guys.
Super
Thank
fun.
you.
Thank you, guys.
You guys are awesome. Let's hang out more. I'm sorry we haven't hung out more.
I'm sorry. It's my fault,
No,
too.
it's my fault.
Is it?
It's John's fault.
It's not you. It's me.
It's him.
It's both your faults. I don't work.
Okay, fine.
Just text that to me. It's not you. It's me.
Yeah.
It's a good breakup.
There's plenty of other distilleries out there and I know that you're gonna.
it's me every
I know
time.
you're gonna find a podcast that
I don't think
really.
you'll have a hard time replacing us as friends.
There's a lot of podcasts that will treat you right. Unfortunately, I'm not in that right mindset right now.
I can promise you one thing: none of them will have corks like us.
I have to work on me before I can work on
Oh,
you.
God, you've got a huge cork.
That we actually do. You've seen it.
Jared's gonna make a new
So-
Cork podcast.
Yeah, right.
Number 2, Chat Whiskey 91 and 111 are coming out. It's replacing 1816 Reserve and 1816 Cask. We can sit here and say how much we love it and how great it is, but John and I will tell each and every one of you listening to just go try it for yourself. Like, you be the judge. Do a blind taste test. Have fun with it, right? Like, a lot of people are scared to do blind taste tests because they kind of know what they like and they don't want to challenge that, right? You've been drinking the same thing for 20, 30 years. I don't want to challenge what I'm drinking. We're right now challenging you. Just go try it and do a blind taste test. It's really fun. Blind taste tests are fun.
That's what we built our whole podcast off of.
Yeah,
awesome.
was blind
Yeah.
tasting, and that's the way that you kind of figure out what you really
I'm
like.
still
And-
interested in potentially blind taste testing you guys before we get out of here. Not necessarily on the podcast, but I would like to blind you guys on some things if we have that time.
We talking blind corks?
That's up to you.
We are more than happy to do whatever.
Cool.
So yeah, other than that,
And at $30 for the 91 and $40 for the cask, you know that bar prices are not going to be astronomical
Yeah.
on these. Go to a bar. Go to your bartender, say, I want to try it. If it's more than a $10 pour, he's ripping you off.
let me say this. In terms of, John said, talked about our kind of internal model of changing the rules, talking about approachability. There's one thing that a lot of people don't talk about in terms of approachability, and that is just what you're getting, the value, right? What you're getting for the price. The amount that we're putting into this, I'm going to make up some bullshit number and say that 99% of other distilleries or brand owners would be coming out at a $50, $60, $70 price point on this stuff, right? We're coming out at a $30 price point, 91, because we like a value. Like, we want you to be like, man, I feel like I am getting an awesome value with Chattanooga whiskey, right? Does that mean that we're kind of taking one on the chin a little bit from a cost perspective? Yeah, we are, because we put a lot into these things.
Malted grains versus regular raw grains, you know, when you look at the cost of goods there's a pretty big difference, but we want to be approachable. We want to be for the everyday drinker that can afford it.
We want to appeal to the masses. Like, we do care about appealing to the masses. I don't want to sit here and be like, if you don't love bourbon, you shouldn't drink our product. No, like, that's not who we are
at all.
We wouldn't become best friends today if that's who we were.
You're right.
No, and it's you're making money, but you're not making as much money as you could have.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, the goal is still to make money, and the goal is to have a profit, but Bernie Lubbers from Heaven Hill would say all the time, he goes, it's a whiskey business, it's not a whiskey charity. And I said to him, Bernie, I get that, but there are really good brands out there, like Pinhook puts out a great bourbon, and their cask strength bourbon is $50. Their regular bourbon is $30. And you think about brands that are doing that, I almost think as a state, Tennessee does a very good job at putting out decent to very, very good whiskey at a decent to very, very good price, where it's not one of those things where people are out there trying to like, okay, look at my $300 whiskey. It's what's something that the masses can drink. Yep. And the word approachable, when I hear approachable, it's the novice can drink it, to your friend down the street can drink it, to the guy who's in all the different bourbon groups on Facebook is going to drink it and still get flavor out of it. Yeah. And the majority of people that buy whiskey or go to a liquor store, they're not Jared and I.
Yeah.
You know, they're not Bob, Jared, and I.
Sure.
It's the majority of the people that keep you all in business are not the folks like us that are nerds. It's the people that are going to the liquor store and
100%.
They're having a party and they're buying Tito's vodka and they're picking up some whiskey with it, and that's what they're doing.
But it's easy, you know, as people in the industry to get hung up on what you see on social media, right?
Yeah.
And be like, 10-year MGP is the hot thing, so we got to be selling 10-year MGP. Like, that's, you know, that's
it's like, great, we could sell one barrel to a private group,
Right,
and then what are we going to do from there?
Exactly, and that's just not what we're focused on.
This belongs on the shelf. Like, it belongs on the shelf.
Thank you.
Next to everything else that we have. It's going to be in the rotation as we're drinking things and just, you know, having nightly pours or whatever. It belongs on the shelf for sure. And I can't wait to see where it goes in the future, because I think the time and energy and money you've put into the distillate itself will shine given more time too. So, I mean, it's already good stuff. It'll hold up. Not just sipping in cocktails, I think it would be awesome too. Yeah.
No one else is doing a 7-day fermentation.
No, not that I know of.
I'm not going to say no one, but like
no one that I know of.
We're in the vast minority.
We are taking our time to provide a quality product. 7-day fermentations provide a very rich, quality, complex product.
I heard Grant came in like the Ring, and he was like, 7 days.
7 days. That's our guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he is the man. And without Grant, without our experimental distillery, to be able to put away 100 barrels of different recipes, and all of us as a company settle on barrel 91, and it just turns out to be the Tennessee high malt recipe, the category, the style that we have created on our own. It's pretty badass to see that graduate to this facility where we have the capacity to put away 14 barrels a day here. We're putting away 7. We have additional room to add more fermenters. But the Tennessee high malt recipe, we want to be the best sipping whiskey from Tennessee.
I feel like I'm sitting in a general sales meeting right now.
And let me tell you guys something else
and
here.
I'm sold.
He's my hot guy. That's why they hired me to head of sales for the company.
He's getting better looking as he talks,
Thank
too.
you.
Or as I drink.
It's definitely as you drink, because I'm looking at this bottle that's been in front of me. And it's,
so to close this out, though, I was sitting here thinking, I mean, John just got married last year.
Yep.
Thank God.
Thank God. What the hell does that mean?
Settling down.
Yeah, dude.
Settling down.
Have you thought about a minivan? Because if you
Five in the back.
if you have to,
Does Subaru make a minivan?
Not yet.
If you have to move,
No.
BMW doesn't have a minivan, but he could get himself a nice Kia or Toyota.
Sorrento, baby.
And
I have a Dodge Grand Caravan.
Wow.
you know what I gotta say?
Because I'm a dad drinking bourbon.
There you are. And I am not a dad.
But I have to say, you might be one day. They have the screens in the back where you could actually sit down and watch a movie. So when you guys are going on sales things and you have everybody in your van, and then you can get a whole bunch of whiskey in the back, you could get people watching movies.
100%.
Maybe think about a minivan.
You are preaching practicality to the wrong person.
Well, no, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
You got to remember.
when you show up to a liquor store or a distributor and you show up in a minivan, you got to think about that. Like they're gonna look at you a different way. They're gonna
I
be
parked the BMW behind the building and I walk around with a limp.
But I'm saying, if you show up with a minivan, they're going to think you're a dad. And they're going to be like, here's this guy. He's married. I see the ring. He's probably a dad. He's probably a great dad.
Or they're
looks
gonna
like a
think
nice
creepy
guy.
as hell is what more
Yeah,
likely.
Well, no, that's only if he puts
it's a 50-50 chance.
That's only if he puts a unicorn on the side of the van and it has a mirror.
I put
on top.
eyelashes on my headlights of my BMW, and just retailers love it.
Where can the folks find Chattanooga Whiskey? Where can...
So Chattanooga Whiskey 91 and Chattanooga Whiskey 111 can be found in Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, and Alabama. As of September, we're opening up Florida. Like I said, we've been very strategic about where we've gone. We have made sure that we're not just going to open a market and just bank on, pumping money into, to marketing and PR. We put feet on the street. I think that's what's made us successful at this game, is that we don't just open a market without putting constant people in those markets. Yeah, Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, and starting September 1st, the whole state of Florida.
And they can find you on the interwebs at Chat Whiskey on Instagram, same on Twitter.
Yep.
And check out ChattanoogaWhiskey.com or chatwhiskey.com. We have a new website. We have a lot more information on our products. You can run through all of our experimentals we've done. You can see our places. Yeah, and go follow us on social media at Chat Whiskey.
Jared, you can find him at Boothill Blades on Instagram. Jared, thank you so much for coming.
Do not DM me.
Okay.
Do not slip into my DMs. That's weird.
Yeah, Jared does have a very long waiting list to get his knives. Please reach out to him on his website if you would like a knife. Please go ahead and send your pics of your cork to Jared at Boothill Blades.
Slide into his DMs with your favorite pick of your cork.
Hashtag no corks.
Hashtag big corks. Guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
You can find Dad's Drinking Bourbon at Dad's Drinking Bourbon on Instagram, Dad's Drinking Bourbon on Facebook, Twitter at Bourbon Dads. Please go ahead and join our Facebook group, answer a couple questions. We'd love to get you in. Also, find us on your favorite podcast app, Apple, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, whatever it is. We are on it. Please leave us an open and honest review, just like we openly and honestly review any of the whiskey we drink.
Cheers!